Welcome to PH Red TV. In today's video we'll enumerate countries with no armed forces. But before we continue, please subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell icon to keep you updated on my future uploads. Can you guarantee security without a military? For most people, this question sounds like a contradiction, but there are countries that maintain their territorial sovereignty without actually having military forces. With the help of the CIA World Factbook, we have identified the 31 countries that currently don't have armed forces. While there are some nations on this list that don't have a military whatsoever, others are dependent on other, more powerful countries that act as protective forces in the case of an emergency. In some territories that don't have any standing army, their police forces function as de facto military forces. Here is our list of 31 countries which exist without regular armed forces. Number 1. Andorra. The mini-state between France and Spain only has about 85,000 inhabitants. Andorra have its own police, called Cos de Policia d'Andorra, but no military. The defense of the independent state is the responsibility of Spain and France because of their close proximity. Number 2. Aruba. The island state of Aruba lies in the Caribbean Sea and has, since 1986, been a separate, semi-autonomous member of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. In recent years, it has become extremely popular with tourists. The defense of the country, which has 116,000 inhabitants, is the responsibility of the Netherlands. Aruba's national security services focus on fighting crime and terrorism. Number 3. Cayman Islands. The Cayman Islands are a group of islands in the Caribbean, belonging to the British Overseas Territories. This means Britain is also responsible for the defense of the archipelago, which lies roughly 150 miles south of Cuba. Nevertheless, the Cayman Islands still have a national police force. Number 4. Cook Islands. The Cook Islands, named after Captain James Cook, are an island state in the Pacific that is independent, but in free association with New Zealand. Thus New Zealand is responsible for its defense, but only at request by the Cook Islands. Number 5. Costa Rica. There have been no armed forces in Costa Rica since 1949, but police forces are usually used for defense purposes. The country, which is often referred to as Switzerland of Central America, proclaimed its permanent and unarmed neutrality in 1983. In fact, Costa Rica is protected by the U.S. Number 6. Curacao. Curacao is also an island state in the Caribbean Sea that has no military forces. However, the Dutch government controls the foreign and defense policy of the 171 square mile island, which has almost 150,000 inhabitants. In a referendum in 2009, the people of Curacao voted to become a self-governing country within the Kingdom of the Netherlands. The Dutch Caribbean Coast Guard also provides maritime security. Number 7. Dominica. Dominica is an island state in the Lesser Antilles in the eastern Pacific and is a member of the Commonwealth, a union of several sovereign states consisting of the United Kingdom and its former colonies. Dominica has a police force called Commonwealth of Dominica Police Force, which also acts as a coast guard. Number 8. Faroe Islands. Located in the North Atlantic between the British Isles Norway and Iceland, the Faroe Islands have a total of 51,000 inhabitants. They do not have regular armed forces, but the Danish government is responsible for their defense. The Arctic Command, which is part of the Danish Armed Forces, is responsible for the territorial defense of the Faroe Islands. Number 9. French Polynesia. French Polynesia is located in the southern Pacific Ocean and consists of many small and large islands. The most famous island of the territory is Tahiti. In total, French Polynesia has 290,000 inhabitants, but no armed forces of its own. Instead, France is responsible for its territorial defense. Number 10. Greenland. Greenland is the largest island on Earth and geographically part of North America, but is an autonomous part of Denmark. In 2008, Greenland voted for stronger self-government and responsibility in domestic affairs. In 2009, Greenland passed the Self-Government Act, recognizing that its citizens had a right to self-determination under international law. However, Denmark continues to exercise control over several policy areas, including foreign, security, and financial policy. This is why the Danish government is also responsible for the defense of the island. Number 11. Grenada. Grenada is an island state in northern part of the Lesser Antilles in the Caribbean Sea. Since U.S. invasion of Grenada in 1983, the country no longer has its own military. However, there is a police force called the Royal Grenada Police Force, which also acts as the Coast Guard. Number 12. Iceland. Although Iceland is a member of NATO, it has no permanent military force. NATO is responsible for Iceland's defense. Since 2006, all U.S. forces have withdrawn from Iceland. Iceland participates in international peace missions with the civilian Icelandic Crisis Management Unit. Number 13. Kiribati. The state of Kiribati, independent since 1979, is located in the western Pacific Ocean and has 109,000 inhabitants. Kiribati, which used to be called the Gilbert Islands, has no regular armed forces and establishment of military is forbidden in constitution. However, the island state does have police forces. Number 14. Liechtenstein. Liechtenstein is the sixth smallest state in the world. Although the country has no military armed forces, its national police force cooperates closely with military forces of neighboring countries like Austria and Switzerland. Number 15. Marshall Islands. After almost 4 decades under U.S. administration, the Marshall Islands gained their independence in 1986. The Marshall Islands have no armed forces of their own, so territorial defense is still provided by the U.S. Number 16. Mauritius. Mauritius is an island state in the Indian Ocean and has 1.3 million inhabitants. The country gained independence from the United Kingdom in 1968. Although Mauritius has no regular armed forces of its own, it has police forces and a paramilitary unit called the Special Mobile Force. This is supposed to ensure the internal and external security of the country. Number 17. Micronesia. Parts of the Caroline Islands, a former UN Trust territory in the Western Pacific under U.S. administration, merged in 1979 and adopted their own constitution as Federated States of Micronesia. Independence followed in 1986. The state has no military of its own, so its defense is the responsibility of the U.S. Number 18. Monaco. The second smallest state in the world, Monaco lies on the French Mediterranean coast and is known as a tax haven. Monaco covers an area of just 0.78 square miles, has a total of 31,000 inhabitants. France is responsible for its defense, but Monaco still has a national police force. Number 19. Montserrat. The Caribbean island of Montserrat has been considered an overseas territory of the United Kingdom since 1783 due to repeated volcanic eruptions. Many of the island's inhabitants have fled abroad in the past 25 years. Although Montserrat has its own police force, there is no regular military and its defense is Britain's responsibility. Number 20. Nauru. Nauru, south of the Marshall Islands, is the smallest republic in the world after being annexed by several countries during the 19th and 20th centuries. The country was declared a UN Trust territory after the Second World War. In 1968, the small island gained its independence. There is no military for its almost 10,000 inhabitants. But according to informal agreement, the responsibility for defense lies with Australia. Number 21, Niue. Located in the South Pacific, Niue Island has just 1,600 inhabitants and is a self-governing territory in free association with New Zealand. Although the small island has no military of its own, it does have its own police force. New Zealand provides the defense to this isolated island. Number 22, Palau. Situated west of the former Caroline Islands, the archipelago opposed unification with the newly founded Micronesia in 1978 and declared its independence as the state of Palau instead. There is still a free association agreement between the US and Palau, thus, the US is allowed to station military personnel in the area. However, this has not yet happened. Number 23, Panama. The Central American country Panama abolished its military in 1990 and instead created the Panamanian Public Forces. They consist of a police force, a national aviation service and a border service. Since 1994, Panama's constitution has prohibited the creation of a standing military. Number 24, Saint Lucia. Saint Lucia is an island state that belongs to West Indies and is a member of Commonwealth. The state does not have its own military but has its own police force, including a special unit and naval unit. Number 25, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. The Caribbean state of St. Vincent and the Grenadines gained its independence in 1979 after having been subordinated to the United Kingdom for a long time. The 102,000 inhabitants of the island have no military, but the island state has its own police force. Number 26, Samoa. The islands, now known as Samoa, were the first Polynesian nation to achieve independence in 1962. Samoa has no formal defense structure or regular armed forces, but it has its own police force. There are also informal defense relations with New Zealand in place. Number 27, San Marino. San Marino is not only the oldest existing republic in the world, but it's also the third smallest European state. The mini-state, which is completely surrounded by Italy, has no regular armed forces but has a voluntary military corps that performs ceremonies and can be used to support the police. In an emergency, the state reserves the right to call all San Marino citizens between the ages of 16 and 60 to service. However, responsibility for defense lies with Italy. Number 28, Sint Maarten. The island of Sint Maarten is autonomous but part of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. The northern part of the island, Saint Martin, is an overseas territory of France. Sint Maarten has no regular armed forces, and the territorial defense of the island is the responsibility of the Netherlands. Number 29, Solomon Islands. Since the independence of the Solomon Islands in 1978, there have been repeated violent riots, and the crime rate on the islands has been high. Between 2003 and 2017, 8 missions consisting of police, military and civilian advisors from a total of 15 countries were active in the islands. The aim of these missions was to restore civil and political order. The Solomon Islands have no standing army but have a police force. Number 30, Tuvalu. Until its independence in 1978, the island state of Tuvalu in the Pacific Ocean was known as the Ellis Islands. The fourth smallest island state has around 11,000 inhabitants and no military of its own. However, Tuvalu has its own police force. Number 31, Vanuatu. Until its independence in 1980, Vanuatu belonged to the New Hebrides, a territory of several Pacific islands administered by the United Kingdom and France. The island state of Vanuatu, consisting of over 80 islands, has no regular military, but there is the Vanuatu Police Force and the Police Maritime Wing. Those are the 31 countries that don't have a military forces in the world. Thank you for tuning in. See you again soon here at PH Red TV.